Welcome, everybody. I'm especially glad tonight to have my son, Mike, and my daughter-in-law, Nikki, join us. Jeannie, you're not muted. Why don't you say our opening prayer for us?
Thank you. Our Father in heaven, we come before thee on this Sabbath day and thank thee for the blessings of this day and the privilege of partaking of the sacrament and renewing our covenants with thee for the things we have felt and learned and for the opportunity to learn together tonight. We pray thy blessing upon those who will be instructing us and upon all of us as we are learning, and ask that we may have thy Spirit to be with us in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. I hope we have.
Sorry.
Yes, Diane.
Can I tell you a fun story?
Yes.
Well, it's a cool story, but it's a sad story. But it's interesting.
Okay.
So years ago when I lived in Texas, I had a friend in Kansas City who one Christmas said, "Hey, Diane, can you find some temple names for my home teaching family?" And he's Black. And it was like just a week or two before Christmas, thanks, So I did. And then I just became obsessed with working on his family history. I did it for free. I just kept working on it. And one time, and I'd go up to Kansas City every once in a while because my friends were there. And one time I even drove down through Arkansas up this long, lonely hill to where his cousin or aunt lived who had all the genealogy. So anyways, I did this research. So just last week, well, we had a client who wanted to compensate descendants of those who may have been enslaved by his ancestors. And so we have a researcher working on that. So she turned in their report this week and I was editing it and I had to go through it really carefully because she did a little bit different report than we usually have. And so since I had to go through it carefully, I came across these names and it's like, Isaac Wisenant. That sounds really familiar. So I jumped back onto my database that I had from this friend that I did this work for years ago. And sure enough, it was the exact same person. So it's like we now know where the plantation is that he came from. So I Facebook messaged his friends, his wife, because I'm Facebook friends with her. They have been so good to me and kind to me every time I would visit them. So I Facebook messaged her and told her how exciting this was. And she wrote me back and said that her husband died the end of July, a sudden heart attack. He's not that much older than I am. And so that's the sad part. But the interesting part is I thought he stayed active his whole life, even though his family fell away from the church, his wife and his children. My friend said he saw him in the temple a lot. He loved the temple. I think he was behind this. I think he's the one that arranged all for this, and he wants me to keep working on it. So isn't that kind of cool?
Good. Just everybody bear with me for a minute. What do you want? Go to Facebook to Town Hall Ward, and it's on there. My husband decided he wants to watch on his own screen tonight, so he needed to know how to get in. An event happened about a week and a half ago that really excited me and made me, as we explored and learned how, it made me want to share this event as one of my lessons. And so I've been really excited about it. And I'm a little bit disappointed that we only have this many people here. So I have some more, I hope that some more come, because I think that this just might be something that several of us are going to want to do. And I'm gonna, if we have time, we're gonna do it in two parts, and we probably will. But part one, my son Mike, who's here tonight, and his wife Nikki were with us at Zupa's, and we were having dinner. And Nikki told us the story about reading her ancestors' history from Memories and Family Search. Nikki, do you want to tell that, or should I? Go ahead. But you'll have to have Mike and me unmute you.
Well, so how much do you want me to tell?
About the locations,
Oh, okay. Well,
or as much as you want.
what?
Start with the deeds.
No, I'm not gonna start with deeds.
Okay, don't start with the deeds.
I'm gonna start with the whole, like, I am here for only the human interest story. Like, I don't know any of the technical stuff.
That's
You guys
good.
are doing all the technical. Anyway, so I inherited a pile of family history, like my pioneer ancestors photos. And so like 3 weeks ago, we went on a really hot date and we went to the Family History Center and scanned them all in. But it got me excited about learning, you know, who are these people in these photographs? And I wanted to know more about their biography. And especially one ancestor, she's in the middle there. She's my great grandmother and she lived to be 103. So I met her when I was like 4 or 5. And I remember meeting her. And then she keeps kind of popping up in my life too. So I was at Nancy's house one time when I was like 15. And on her shelf, she had this book, which I've tracked down. And so it's the same, you know, that's my great grandma there. So I was reading about this great grandma and she was born near Mount Pleasant and I lived in Mount Pleasant when I was a kid. And she says that she was born at this place called Birch Creek. But now, and she wrote this in like the 60s and she said, but now they call it Mountain Home. They've changed it, the name, Mountainville. I'm sorry, Mountainville. And then she talked about going into town, into Mount Pleasant often as a child. And I was like, there is nowhere near Mount Pleasant called Mountainville. I know there's not. So, but I Googled it thinking maybe it'll show up somewhere. I couldn't find anywhere. So I was telling Nancy this, like, how do I find old pioneer maps so that I can figure out like how close was she to Mountainville or to Mount Pleasant? Did they just go in there all the time or you know? And so then that's when Nancy stepped in because she gets excited about family history. So we're at Zupa's and so it started, she said, well, we could go to the BYU library and look at maps, but we decided it was kind of late in the day.
I found it on the phone too.
Oh, you did?
And I found it on my phone, so we didn't have to go there.
I Googled it on the phone. It was not a phone. I don't know how he finds things.
Mike can always find something when he does internet searches that I can't find. That is just a real skill of his.
But also, I don't think you found a map. You just found somebody talking
The
about.
details of where it was, and that was
You
it.
found somebody talking about Mountainville being near Mount Pleasant, but we didn't know
It also
where.
said near Birch Creek.
Yes, but we couldn't find either of those on an actual map to look at it. Anyway, so we went home and Nancy showed me how to look up deeds, or like we
The
looked
first, I said, well, let's start at the beginning. Let's look for deeds in San Pete. So I'll take over for a while, Nikki, okay? So I'm going to share my screen and walk you through the process that we did. We went to Family Search, and on Family Search, we went to the card, we did search, and then the card catalog, and on the card catalog, we looked up San Pete, Utah, San Pete County, Utah, and did a search. And when you do that, you come up with a long list of possible things that you might want to know. So I said we wanted to look in deeds, so we wanted to look under land and property. And under deeds, it gave us several options like certificates of discharge. That must be where San Pete County, Utah stores the discharge papers of all veterans that come from San Pete County. But that's not the one I wanted. The one I wanted was deeds and mortgages. So we looked up deeds and mortgages, and I was very disappointed at the incompleteness or apparent incompleteness of the deeds and mortgages in San Pete County. But we went ahead and looked under the only index listed, and that was the grantor index. And the grantor index is who is selling land. Now, why didn't it give me that page? Did the same thing when I sort of practiced. Oh, because I didn't come over here to the camera and choose camera. The camera means that it's not in a book at the Family History Center. It's on digital images, which is what the pages would look like if we were looking on a microfilm reader. And by going page by page through these pages, we concluded that on page 16, we found, can you see it down here? We found Elizabeth Burnside selling land on the 9th of March, 1892. Now, if we would have had the grantee index, we could have found when the land was bought, but there was only a grantor index. And so then we came on across the line and it told us the specific details of the land. Now I've kind of lost which line I'm on, but it gave the possibility of telling us which part of the land based on the township and the range and how many acres it was. So now we knew that Elizabeth Burnside was selling land, if that was the right Elizabeth Burnside. And so, but we wanted to go and look at the deed itself, and we were very disappointed. Sanpete County filming of the deeds is atrocious. And we never were able to succeed in doing that very much. Although in most cases you would be able to do that. So then we went to choice number 2. And choice number 2 we have done before in our lessons. And that is we went to the Bureau of Land Management to their site called GLO Land Records. And so we pulled up GLO Land Records. And now, Mike, why don't you take over and show what we found when we did this? You have to take yourself off of mute. And then share your screen.
All right, so I'm just.
I have to stop sharing mine if you're going to start sharing yours, right?
Are you going to see all the Burnside property? Is that what
No,
you
let
do?
me go to this one.
So Mike has now started sharing his screen.
So this is the same thing we saw just a second ago. And what we're going to do is this is where you can find where land was originally went from the federal government to an actual individual. And so what we did is we went to location.
Can I interrupt you a bit,
This is the
Mike?
very first time, though. It's the pioneers.
Okay, so
So
I'm gonna interrupt Mike for a minute, and I'm gonna say many states in the United States are land grant states. And what that means is that the federal government owned land because we had the Louisiana Purchase and other times when we owned land. And when the federal government wanted to give some of this land or sell it to Americans for one reason or another, then it's the records of those land events have been transferred to the Bureau of Land Management, and they keep track of those records. And in 1862, the federal government made a law that said, in order to help settle the Western United States, any American who was willing to go and live on 160 acres of land for 7 years and improve it each year and get documents to verify that he's telling the truth about this can have the 160 acres after 7 years. And so a very large amount of the West was settled under this method. So now Mike's going to tell us what he found when he went to look.
So we went to state first, and so obviously went to Utah. And to make the search easy, all we did was Burnside. We didn't do.
Did you do county?
No, I think we just did this. We made it really easy. And then search the patents. So it's checking the database. And this is what we wanted. This is what we wanted to see right here. Look at the top. There's the Burnside Elizabeth that we were just talking about. And if you look, it has the details, the township, range, and section. Now that's how for those of us, including me, who aren't really surveyors, that's how the land was broken up. And it's into squares, but it's sections, townships, and range. And so those are the numbers that you have to know. And you also have to have the south and the east. That was something that we had to look at. So let's go to.
So may I remind everybody that when you're doing family history, you have a piece of paper so you can write stuff down, okay?
So we clicked on, if you saw me, I just clicked on the name, and it brought us to this, the patent details. Now, before we go too far into this and kind of do the search, I think this is really interesting. If I look at the actual patent image, this is where the actual document that gave the property to Nikki's family. And we'll see if
So
it comes
this would
up
have been
next.
at the end of 7 years after they had improved it every year.
There you go.
And it seems like it's taking a while, but this is a lot easier than going to Washington, D.C.
Yeah. Okay, well, when it comes up, we'll be able to see the actual document, and you'll see that it was signed by the President of the United States
Oh,
or someone for him. So all of these have the president's signature, and here it's coming into focus now. You can scroll down to Elizabeth Burnside and testimony Grover Cleveland, President of the United States. So that's how it came to us. Grover Cleveland was the one who signed it when this property went to Nikki's family, the Burnsides. That was kind of cool.
There's a good clue up at the top. It says that, and it's right on this part. Oh, I can't show you because I'm not live. But it says that it's Elizabeth Burnside, widow of
John Burnside.
John Burnside. And that's why they were both listed on the deed. And if you didn't already know her relationship to John Burnside, that would clarify it for you.
So now getting back to the patent details. So we found these three plots. Now, the way this works, if you look on the far left side, there's a little box. If you click on that, it zooms in and it shows you, you can see Fairview right there. You can see Mount Pleasant right there. And it kind of shows you where that land was. And each of these, we can see the areas where they were. So then we went and wrote these down. So we're going to write down.
So, okay, is it the big orange one or just the tiny little ones that lit up?
This right here, these little small ones are the ones that lit up. You can see them go on and off when that's where the actual, pretty close to where the property was. And so we're going to look at one of these. So we got 14. The township is 14 South. The range is 5 East. And then the section is 18. Now, the other thing you'll see is it says meridian. So you've all heard probably of the prime meridian that goes through England, Britain, and then down like down through France. And I guess if you watch like the Dan Brown movie, it talks all about that. But that's the prime meridian. That's a line that the people used to do, as well as at the time. They also use it for property to figure out where the property is. So in America, they started their own meridian in America, and so they could have an east, west, and north, south to go off of as people laid out their property and surveyed it for use. And then when the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints left the main population and moved out in the middle of nowhere, they had to start their own meridian. So they started their own meridian, the Salt Lake Meridian. And from what I understand, it goes right next to the temple, the corner of the temple lot is where the Salt Lake Meridian goes through. And so that's where all of these references are based off of the Salt Lake Meridian. And so this gave us our first clue. And then the next thing we had to do was we had to convert it to something that we could use. that would make it easy to find. And to do that, we found a website called randymajors.org Research Hub. So we're going to go to that site next. Oh, and now it's okay. And then this, and it has lots of advertisements on there trying to get you to pay for more tools. But what we want to do, we can do for free. So we're going to go to Map Tools, and we're going to go down to Section, Township, and Range. Like I said, lots of ads. They really excited about getting us to buy stuff. So it's establishing a connection. And the bottom of this, you can see where I can enter in that same data that I had before. So we have section 18. And we have for the township, we have 14. And then south. And then for the range, we have 5 east. And then we're going to put for the state, we're going to put Utah. And if with that we hit go. And there it is. It found the property. So this is a property overlaid on a Google map. And if I zoom out, we can see up here, we can see Fairview and the and there's Mount Pleasant down the bottom. So that kind of got us closer to where it actually is. Now coming back in, one of the tools on this is if you go to map, you can click terrain, and it gives you a topographical map where you can kind of understand what the terrain looks like. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with topographical maps, you see these little lines going through there. Those are topographical lines. The closer they are together, the steeper it is. And you can see, like right here, this is at 6,200 feet, and then it just keeps going up and keeps going up. And right here, where they're really close together, that's because it was really steep going up the hill. And so you can kind of see it went from a valley up higher because the lines are closer together. So this gave us a rough idea where it was at, but it's going to be kind of hard to navigate to. So the next thing we did is we looked at the top, and it had the lat long. In this case, it had the long lat. Usually it's lat, you always hear latitude, then longitude. This time, for some reason, it gives you the longitude, latitude. So we wrote that down. So I'm writing it down again. So we have negative 111.40503 and 39.60223. So that's the long lat. And then from there, we went to Google Maps. And the Google Maps, we put in those coordinates, but for some reason, this goes the other way. So that one is long lat, this is lat long. So we have to put the 39 first, 39.60223, and then a comma, and then the other one, a negative 111.405.03. Now, sometimes you'll see these in minutes and seconds, and so it's degrees, minutes, and seconds, and it's which are all divided by 60, so it's kind of hard to do. It's easiest to just use the decimal place. And in this case, Google can do either one. And then we clicked on the button to find it. And this time it found it, the same thing we had before. And just like all Google Map has, we can look at the satellite imagery and actually see it when it comes up. But the great thing was we could just hit directions. And it gives, well, let me put my starting point. So we're here in Ivins, Utah. And it gives us the route how to get there. So we could go directly to that property. Now, in this case, we came directly from my parents' house, and so we came from the other side. But we had the instructions on directly how to get there. So then, as we were driving home back here to southern Utah from my parents' house, we decided that we would go take a side trip to go see this property.
Last Sunday.
This was last Sunday. So this right here is the first property we went to. This is the Burnside property north of Fairview. This is one of the properties that we looked up. And you can see that this is still used as farmland. Looks beautiful. We drove by and saw there were several old pioneer kind of houses. You kind of wonder if any of those were left over from the Burnsides. No way of really knowing without doing more research, but we enjoyed looking at it. And as we were driving up to the next spot, I saw this sign. And if you look close, the Burnsides.
So Mike, we're not seeing that picture.
Are you not seeing it?
No.
Oh. It says your screen sharing.
I have it on my desktop. I can show it.
So let me try it again, because that's the I think it's pretty.
Totally remarkable. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you see the first photo?
Well, no, the only photos that we're seeing are the ones that are showing up on the Google Maps.
You have to close
Let
it.
me just close all of that then and see if that helps.
Well, you closed
I
it
know,
off.
'cause I'm changing I gotta change which screen I'm sharing.
There we go.
Oh, okay.
I thought I was just sharing my desktop. So let me
Okay, so this is what all of these to the side are what you saw first.
yeah, so let me go back to, I want to start with number 2. This is the Burnside property north of Fairview. This is the first one we went to.
I think this property, because of the way my grandmother talked, this property was just farmland. And so that's why when her grandmother was widowed, Elizabeth, she sold it. And because my grandmother in her biography talks about being up in the mountains and it being really crisp, clear air and being able to see the whole valley floor. But this is on the valley floor, so anyway.
So then driving up the canyon or up the road, we drove down the Mountainville Highway, which we never heard of before.
Yeah.
And then we
drove up Birch Creek Road.
Birch Creek Road, and we saw this house here. And if you look on the left-hand side, there's a sign, and I'll blow that up for you. The Burnsides. So we drove by and saw there's still
The family name.
the family name is on the property in that area. And we drove a little bit further up the canyon or up the road.
Right to the side of it, it's actually right in front of the house, right to the side of the road. One side of the road is a creek, and I'm assuming it's Birch Creek.
Well, and there's a sign that does say Birch Creek. It does say Birch Creek.
And then
And,
on
just,
the other side of this little road is a little farmhouse.
and then we went up to this was where we actually found the pin and where Google took us to. But now it's turned into a place where you can buy a little lot and put looks like a little vacation, home or cabin, up on the hillside overlooking the Fairview in Sanpete County.
So I think at some point, this property here, they sold, and then through the years, it's been sold as vacation. You can buy a cabin on. But I'm guessing that the other with the white farmhouse came down through the generations.
But we were just, the fact that we saw, go back to that picture, the fact that we saw this was just an answer that we had gone to the right place and found the family property all these years later. And it's surprising when you actually walk onto land and sit there and see and just realize this is land that belonged to family. This is, and you can think back that this was the land that Grover Cleveland gave them after they had worked and improved it for them to start a home as they settled, the West and settled Utah. So it kind of tied us to Sanpete County stronger than Nikki's always had yearnings for home, to go back to Sanpete County. And now it's even more so because now you have these that kind of show just how long that's been important to her and her family.
Isn't that something? Now, that touched my heartstrings when Mike and Nikki talked about this. Did that touch your heartstrings? I hope that somebody from our class, or all of us, will look up a piece of our ancestors' land and follow this procedure and see what it looks like.
So since then, I've gone and just looked at other stuff, and I know that on the Hugo side that we came from Oklahoma, and so I did a quick search, and I saw that my great grandpa James Hugo, he had a brother named Joseph Hugo, and I found the deed records for Joseph Hugo when Joseph got the land in
You might want
Oklahoma.
to maybe change your screen if you're showing us something different.
I'm not. I'm just talking now.
Okay.
And so that was kind of interesting to see, and it made me wonder if he was a Sooner and got to that land soon, so he could get it before anyone else did. I don't know about that.
I know the answer to that.
Okay.
You probably know that Oklahoma is called the Sooner State. And the reason is because there was a certain day when Oklahoma was effectively stolen from the Indians and allowed white settlers to go in and stake their claim to whichever land they wanted. But there were those, including the Hugos, who had gone in ahead of time and figured out which land they wanted so that they could hurry up and go to that land and choose land that they had already chosen. And the Hugos did that.
So they were Sooners.
They were Sooners. Yep. And if Mike were to look in Kansas, he would find James Hugo and his father, both of their homestead papers, where they got them.
I never knew the history of the Sooner word.
What?
I never knew that Sooners were Sooners.
You just wondered why it was the word, huh?
It was in musicals.
Okay. Well, now, Mike, I'm going to do story 2. And I don't think story 2 is quite as interesting, but let's do it anyway. So if you'll
Stop sharing.
unshare your screen, and then I will reshare my screen. And my story is also from a couple of weeks ago. My sister and I and our husbands were in Mancos, near Mancos, Colorado, for a funeral. And the afternoon before the funeral, Alice said, I want to go see where our grandparents live. It's been a really long time since I've been there. And I said, okay, let's go. And we figured out we didn't know where it was. Because things have changed, the roads have changed. When we got to the road that I thought it was, I recognized no buildings. Now, I wonder if that's in part because my grandparents lived in a mobile home. And we're talking about when I was a sophomore in high school, and that was a long time ago. And my great-grandparents lived down the road, and they had 2 clay pots on their front porch. And that was how I always recognized their house. And if that house is still there, I don't think the 2 clay pots are anymore. But nonetheless, my mother had grown up, well, my mother's family, her grandparents had homesteaded on the south end of Mancos. And that's where a big community of Mormons were. And most of the non-Mormons homesteaded on the north side of town. And at some point in time, my Wilden, my grandpa and my great-grandpa moved east of town. And so when they did that, anyway, that's what happened. So I always assumed that my Grandpa that my mother grew up on the Mormon side of town. So anyway, we did not find where my grandparents lived. So here I come, ready to search for a land patent, and I'm going to go to the state of Colorado. And my grandpa's last name was Wilden, and his first name was Mark. And so again, we'll have to, it didn't take nearly as long to pull up. So there were lots of Wildens that homesteaded. And I have to go down a ways before I get to Mark. But here I get to Mark. And so when I go to the part that was going to show us the map of his land, this is what I get. But if I go back up there and write down, I didn't get it yet because I didn't put the clicks on the squares. And here it is, halfway between Cortez, Colorado and Mancos, Colorado. And it is off to the west of Mancos and right close to Mesa Verde. My parents grew up feeling like Mesa Verde was in their backyard. In my brain, I knew that they lived in the Mormon community, which was called Weber. And if I write down here, range, township 36 north, range 14 west, section 7. Then we do the same thing then and go to the Randy. That gave us an approximate map. Now we go to the Randy Majors site, and we go to section, range, and township, and we sidetrack we try to sidetrack all of the ads. And now we have to go to the bottom to where the red letters are. And we said section 7, township 36 north, range 14 west, in the state of Colorado, and we go. And it'll take a minute to draw it. Oh, I'm going to add one more comment about when we were out looking for this property the other day. I said, I kind of think that we're on the right road because I remember going down a hill, and at the bottom of the hill, it was kind of like it was a little gorge, and that's where my Aunt Betty's husband's family was from. Now, I think I need to come back up and choose map terrain. Okay, and what have I not done right, Mike?
What are you trying to do? You can go to satellite too to see the better view.
The satellite? That's it. Okay. There's the satellite view. And maybe I'd rather see I don't know which I'd rather see, the county lines or the city limits. Now this is County Road 33.75. My one cousin said, oh, I think that it's out on County Road 35 until it turns into 34. So we kind of get the idea that we're close there. But now we can either go to Google Maps or Google Earth. And the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to click on a new thing, and I'm going to have to move my pictures of you guys down, but I'm going to come over here and click on the 9 dots or whatever. And if I come down from there, I can find all the different tools that Google has, and I can come down till I find the one that says Maps. And if I have passed it over, tell me where I passed it over. There it is. Okay. And now I have to do the search. I'm gonna put in the lat long. See, Mike, I forgot to save the lat long. So right here is the lat long. And it's not letting me save it by sliding over it, so I have to write it down. And it's minus 108. And that's important because if I don't put minus, it's going to put me in Mongolia. 108.43530, comma 37.39299.
So the minus and the positive is kind of like an east-west of lat long.
Okay. 37.392. You remember I'm putting it in the opposite order because the lat long difference minus 108.
You did an underscore, not a minus.
Oh, did I? Minus 108.43530. And now, in order to have that say that I'm coming from Provo, I have to put in my location. Provo, Utah. Now that's going to show me all the way from Provo. I could perhaps have just done it from Mancos or from Cortez. And I would have where did I go? I lost it, didn't I? There I am. Okay. But I have to keep going up until I get to a little bit more detailed thing. And did I want to choose a different view? And how do I choose the different view, Mike? Layers. Now I have to move everybody's pictures again. I want terrain. Okay, and now I have to move everybody's pictures again. Do you see all your pictures on my screen?
Yeah.
We don't see your pictures.
Okay. Now I'm not on terrain again. How did I get off of terrain? Maybe I want to come out just a little bit. I don't know why things don't go the way you practice them. When I practiced this, I could see ever so clearly as I drove on this road right here, I could drive down the hill and into the gorge where my Aunt Betty's husband's family lived. So I know that that was in fact where we were when we drove there the other day. Maybe that wasn't the hill. Maybe it was a different one. But it was just so clear. I could see exactly on the map the way that we had driven when we were out looking for this house. So I knew that we had in fact been on the right road. For me, there has always been something special. And I think it's because the places where my ancestors lived in my life become sacred places. And so when I am near them or learning about them, I just feel those special tugs to my heartstrings. So I hope that many of you will go home and do this. I was thinking specifically of some of you that have come to my classes many weeks, that you would go home and try it. So Jeannie and Michelle and Helen, I'm not sure exactly what records you're going to find for your family, but you're bound to have some records that you can follow through with some of these same techniques for your family. Diane,
I did already, Nancy.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Good.
My father's paternal grandfather, great grandfather, I think it was. And it said, when I found it on the BLM records, it said that it was a Indian trust land. So
Okay.
I'll have to try this randymajor.org and Google Maps to see exactly where that is.
Yes. And then see if you recognize the landmarks in the area. There are lots of landmarks on the reservation.
Yep.
Well, Mike, thank you. And Nikki, thank you for coming and helping tonight. I think that to have this procedure down in these steps and seeing the examples will be good for us on those occasions we want to look something up. So I thank Mike for helping. And we're finished 10 minutes early, so I think we should be finished 10 minutes early.